partly continuation of stuff that's been going on for quite a while in my thinking, and partly kind of new work in progress. It's a project that's kind of still working itself through. So I haven't got everything sorted out, and I'll appreciate kind of the comments and feedback, and it's all terrible, like things that you've had. So the background of this topic is I have done a lot of work on self-referential probability sentences. And these are coming from a background when you're interested in the liar paradox, a sentence that says something about its own truth, in particular says it's false. And I've been thinking about how we can see similar issues with probability. What this talk is about, though, is not directly these kinds of self-referential sentences. It's about phenomena that arise in the real world which display the same pattern. The same sort of phenomena arise in epistemology and cause problems for rationality. So the question is, how should we deal with these situations? And the considerations in the background of stuff I'm talking about today is inspired by counts of the liar paradox, trying to turn it into like probability things, and now I'm trying to turn that kind of formal probability work into like really how you should respond to these actual situations kind of count. So in particular, it's based on a kind of Kripkean account for the liar with supervaluational logic in the background, but that won't make so much of an appearance in this talk. So these kinds of cases where the phenomena arise in epistemology, they're unusual situations. I'm not claiming that these are like things we're faced with really every day, but I do think they are things that we might find ourselves in these situations, and it's important to know how to deal with them. And in particular, because if you're trying to give an account of rationality that wants to be relatively general, it should tell you how to deal with these cases, and these cases are causing problems for most accounts of rationality that people are developing. The answer I'm kind of giving out here is that we should turn to imprecise probabilities to try and understand what's going on here. But we'll get to all that. First of all, let's talk about what the kind of cases I'm thinking of are. So usually in epistemology, we might be interested in questions like whether a coin will land heads, and I have a certain attitude towards the coin landing heads. In particular, this will be captured by degrees of belief, and I would have degree of belief half. So we've got this framework where people have attitudes towards various propositions or things, and they've got more structure than just believe, disbelief. They've got this kind of quantified structure. In particular, you've got, say, a half for this situation. There might be cases which are less obviously connected to kind of chances, so it's also going to be an account of my attitude towards whether my train will be on time. It'll say degree of belief 0.8, for example, that my train will be on time. So these are the kind of underlying attitudes that I'm sort of taking as the starting point for the stuff I'm interested in. And something epistemologists might do is consider, what does it take for these degrees of belief to be rational or not? And they might try and give kind of general constraints on rationality, like your degrees of belief should be probabilistic, should satisfy the axioms of probability. However confident you are that your train's going to be on time, the confidence that a train is not going to be on time should somehow balance with that. They should add up to 1. So epistemologists are often interested in these sorts of cases, and they're going to say things about what it takes to be rational in these scenarios. The cases I'm interested in, or the cases that are causing these kinds of phenomena, have a certain feature that these safe cases don't have. The feature is, oi, 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 oh, you're going to see all my comments to myself. Oh, this is terrible. Can I have a second to fix that?
Do you want us to switch the projector off?
Here I am live. I have no idea what that
oh, yeah.
What's the problem?
Well, we are hearing the talk about the liar paradox.
The original title of
And the problem is that the slides contain remarks.
Can you just suppress the generation of the notes slide?
I mean, it's not a terrible issue. I'm just not happy. Give me a second to see if I can quickly do it. And then, if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
She uses a PDF which contains the remarks which she put in for herself.
Apparently,
It's
it's
all
placed
how
the same to notes.
We could just ignore them. You can just ignore them, but that's sad.
Beamer doesn't have anything.
Have you ever tried consciously ignoring?
Yeah, this bit doesn't make sense. Work it out.
The problem is that Beamer package allows you to yourself.
And then they translate it.
what is happening?
We don't have a converter.
So it's the viewer software which is the problem.
Sorry?
You've got the right viewer software on this, but not on that computer. Is that the issue?
It's not the software. It's I compiled it to the comments here. So now I've recompiled it, and I'll see if it downloaded it. But it might not be the right kind of link now. But if it's not, then we're gonna just carry on with it.
It could be more honest talk.
Does that work? No. Okay, well you're gonna have to ignore it.
So if you copied it over, you have to close the window in Acrobat because Acrobat doesn't auto refresh from the hard drive.
No, but I downloaded it. Would have downloaded. It just hasn't downloaded.
Well, we will either see or not. The point is, she already knows that the comments are displayed.
We're just going to carry on. Okay, I've done that. All right. So cases. So the red comments are ones you should ignore. So these are cases where what you believe will impact what happens, either directly by changing what happens in the world, or by somehow altering the evidence that you get about the world. So here's a case like this, and this is a case from William James. William James has been on this, is hiking in the mountains, and he's found himself in a tight spot. And he's stuck. And the only way he can escape is by making this terrible leap across a chasm. And it's this big jump, and he's like, that's maybe too far for me. Now the situation is that if he's confident that he's going to be able to make the jump, he just thinks, yeah, no, I'm going to make it. Then he's going to run up, and he's going to have all the enthusiasm, and he's going to fly across and make it. If he starts off with the opinion that he will not make it, he's going to be kind of scared and run up and be hesitant and then end up falling. So whether he believes it or not, or has high confidence in it, because we've got kind of probabilities in the background of all this stuff, will affect whether he makes this jump or not. And this case is one where he has to believe it for it to come true. You need to sort of have faith to be able to get the evidence that will show you the way things are. Or something. So this is a case where what you believe affects what happens in some way. And these are the unsafe cases. So the safe cases were just like facts about the world. I'm just kind of a theorizer about what's going on over there. These cases are ones where I'm sort of involved in the world myself somehow. And we are in these situations, like what we believe does change what's going to happen in the world. So those were kind of the in a way, those aren't going to be the massively problematic cases for me. Here's a case which is kind of similar, but has an opposite sort of structure. So in the leap case, you had to start off with the belief, and then it would come true. In this case, a belief will undermine itself. So this is the passport case. Alice is a forgetful philosopher. She's at the airport, and her chair is really wobbly. And this is really annoying her. She can't get on with her philosophy. So the only thing she's got to stabilise her chair with is her passport. And she's thinking, what am I do? She goes ahead and stabilises her chair with her passport. Now the question is she going to forget this passport or not? If she is confident that she'll forget it, she thinks, yeah, no, I'm going to forget that, then she's going to end up worrying about it the entire time, not be able to get on with her philosophy, and she will end up remembering it when the time comes to pack up and get off the aeroplane. But if she thinks she will not forget it, if she thinks she'll remember it, then she's going to get on with her philosophy, the flight will be called, and she's going to run away to a flight and leave her passport under the chair. So this is a case where, by believing she's going to forget it, she ends up not forgetting it. And by believing she's not going to forget it, she ends up forgetting it. So here, whatever you believe, like, the truth flies away from you to the opposite one. So believing that things are going to go one way causes them to go the other way. And the result here is you have unstable beliefs. You're going to end up thinking, oh, so let's just start off with the attitude that I'm going to forget it. Then I'm going to be worrying about it the whole time. Oh, and then I'm going to remember it. You can sort of go through this reasoning process yourself if you're Alice and you know this about yourself. So if Alice knows this about herself, she's going to kind of have trouble coming up with a stable opinion here, because whatever her opinion is will cause things to go the other way. I want to go through some other cases which have this similar kind of undermining beliefs nature to them. So here's a case of bluffing. And this is, I'm playing poker with my mum, and my mum knows me really well. I mean, she knows what I'm thinking kind of before I think it. And I'm trying to read read whether she's got a good hand or not. She's sitting there smiling. So my first instinct is, oh, she must have a good hand. But then I think, no, she's going to know that I'm going to realise that she has a good hand. Right? She's sitting there smiling. She's going to be bluffing. So I think she actually has a bad hand. Oh, no, wait. But my mum knows me so well. She knows I'll realise she's bluffing, so she must be double bluffing. So she must really have a good hand. Wait, but maybe she even knows me that well, and then she'd be tricking. You keep going, right? However far I can go through the reasoning process, I can sit there and think about the final opinion I've come to, and think, hey, but my mum knows me so well that she's going to realise I've got to that opinion, and will be sort of either smiling or, it'll be the other one. So all things, it's not just that my initial instinct about whether she's bluffing or not is wrong. It's even after kind of going through this reasoning process, I'm still going to get it wrong. Kind of similar case here is from Egan and Elder. This is the bad navigator case. So this is in their paper. I can't believe I'm stupid. And they say, one of the authors, A.E., we won't specify which author, one of these authors, they're all things considered judgments about which road to take. Well, they're a really bad navigator. And they've come to a crossroads. And it's a crossroads they've been to a number of times before. They're away at, they have to get back to the hotel, they're away on a research visit somewhere, and he's at this crossroads. And he's thinking, should I go left or right? Is home, or the hotel, to the left or to the right? But he's such a bad navigator, that whatever his judgment is about which way he should go, that's wrong. It's not just that it's chancy. It's not just a half-half. It's worse than a half. He gets it wrong most of the time. The question is, what can he do about that? If he knows that's the situation, he knows I get this wrong most of the time, and it's not just my initial instinct is wrong, it's my whole reasoned process is wrong. What should I end up doing? Whatever judgment I come to, if I think about it for a little bit longer, I'll end up changing my mind. So this again is a case where just intuitively kind of reasoning about these believing situations, we're going to have unstable or undermining attitudes. Maybe you think he can get himself into this sort of situation if he, at some point, kind of told himself, that's a different case. He told himself that you should go the opposite way to the way you think. But then the way he thinks kind of updates to that, and then it flips back. Okay, but these are supposed to also be cases where you can't come to a stable judgment. Every time you do another stage of thinking about it, you're going to want to change your opinion. One last one I'm not going to talk about so much. What's importantly different about these two cases are cases where it's not where the hotel changes depending on my beliefs. It's not like a causal impact of my beliefs on the world. It's just I get different evidence about the world. Whereas the passport case is a case of causal changes. This is a kind of a mixed case. I have evidence that the share price of a certain stock is going to increase. But if I'm confident that it's going to increase, I'm just not going to be able to help myself. I'm going to tell my partner about it, and then he'll tell his friends, and then everyone's going to, suppose I'm involved in all the stock market. Basically, it's going to end up being well overbought, and then the stock price will crash. So, on the face of it, I think I should have a high degree of belief that the stock market is going to increase, or the share price of the stock is going to increase. But if I adopt that high belief, it's going to cause it to crash and actually decrease. So then I think, I shouldn't be confident that it'll increase. But then I'm back in the sort of initial scenario where the only relevant fact is this evidence that it's going to increase, like the out there evidence. That's another kind of case. So there are 4 different cases that each have kind of different features, but 4 different cases where it looks like I'm going to have difficulty coming up with a stable opinion. So the question is, what should we do in these cases? To think about that, let's just get a little bit more precise about them. So let's think these are cases where if your confidence bigger than a half that we should go left, then since he's an anti-expert, that the cases in which he has confidence bigger than half are the ones where he should actually go right. The cases where he thinks, no, it's more likely to be right than left, are cases where either it's definitely right, or I'm pretty confident it's right, or there's some good evidence. So suppose he assigns degree of belief 0.7. Degree of belief 0.7, that left will get me home. Then he's going to reflect on that opinion. It's going to end up being that I then have great evidence that right is the way home. We're in this kind of scenario, or in this case of it, so right is going to be the way home. And if we think this is kind of an extreme version of the case, that's going to be sort of an easier one for me to account for, I'm going to just say, that recommends 0. So if I start with opinion 0.7 and I think about it, one more stage of reasoning, I'm going to want to change my opinion to degree of belief 0. But if I have degree of belief 0, that's also undermining. Because now I'm in this case where I'm certain that it's right. My degree of belief that I should go left is 0. Then I'm certain that I should actually go right. But if I'm certain I should actually go right, then because I know I'm an anti-expert, I should become certain that I should actually go left. So this is a case where I've set it up with kind of certainty each time. So if you know what your degrees of belief are, you're like a perfect anti-expert. Your beliefs like perfectly anti-correlate with the truth. That will give you perfect evidence about whether you should go left or right. And so you get to think about my current beliefs and then change them, either to go perfectly right or perfectly left, so either 1 or 0. So it's a case like this. If you adopt a kind of high-ish degree of belief, if you're more confident in going left, then by thinking about it, you're going to become certain that you should go right. If you're certain that you should go right, or in general, like, confident that you should go right, then you become certain that you should go left. If we think about this, we end up kind of looping around the pattern here. So in this case, every single opinion you could have, every credence you could come up with is going to be undermining. Once you've adopted that opinion, something else looks better, looks preferable. So I claim that this is kind of a bad situation to be in. What is it that's bad about having undermining beliefs? The claim is, so they're certainly going to be unstable. If you have these beliefs, if you had like another, if you just thought about it for a little bit longer, I mean, actually we're not doing this kind of over time, we're doing this like at a particular instance, but like, if you had that ability to think about it a little bit longer, you would want to change your opinion. So just by sitting there in your table, at your chair, you're going to want to change your beliefs without sort of getting any external evidence about which way is the way home. Just by reflecting on your own opinions, you get to change your mind. You should change your mind. Rationality even requires you to change your mind. It's not just a kind of a case where I happen to just not be able to settle my mind, to be unstable in my opinions. It's a case where whatever opinion you adopt, it looks like you have to. Rationality forces you to change your mind. So what is going to be the ultimate kind of rationality requirement is the question. So they're bad from the perspective of they don't support themselves. You're going to want to change your mind. They're undermining. There's another kind of specific problem with them, which is they can't be relied on in decision making. This is an example from Lewis, who's talking about immodest inductive methods. So he says, suppose you have this magazine, Consumer Reports, and you trust this magazine. This is your judgment. This is your thing that you think you should make all decisions about what purchases to make according to Consumer Reports. And it tells you to buy crummy toaster. Interested in what toaster to buy, and so you open up your Consumer Reports and it says, buy crummy toaster. You think, all right, I'm going to go out and buy a crummy toaster. But then you're flicking through this Consumer Reports, and on page 10 it says, best consumer guide, which? So, you find your Which magazine, you open that up, and it says buy toasty toaster. We started off with Consumer Reports, and we thought we had a good, we thought we wanted to trust that. And it told us to do something, to go out and buy crummy toaster. But it also told me that this other method of choosing toasters is better than my method of choosing toasters. So you're not going to end up trusting the original Consumer Reports. You're going to end up listening to its advice, looking at Which, and buying toasty toaster. So the Consumer Reports is an undermining kind of method of coming to decisions. It's like, just like our beliefs are undermining. So if our beliefs are ones which say, turn left or buy crummy toaster, but they also say, those other beliefs are better than my beliefs, and those other beliefs tell you to do something else, You're like, well, why should I trust those original beliefs? If my beliefs are unstable, they recommend some other beliefs. Why should I trust anything that they say about what I should go out there and do? So, these are going to be problematic situations. The worry is that these kinds of undermining scenarios are ones where any belief you could come up with, any opinion you want to adopt, is going to undermine itself. And that's going to be problematic. It gives you these pretty unstable attitudes to hold, these attitudes which aren't going to be helpful for action guiding, aren't going to be nice things to have. And the question is, what we should do about it. The passport case, actually a number of the cases, it all depends exactly how we spell them out, like exactly what are we thinking is being encoded in this kind of. I gave you a very informal description of the original passport case, and now I'm spelling it out with numbers. Maybe this isn't the most obvious spelling out of numbers, but it looks like it could be a sort of precisification of that underlying scenario, one where what matters is whether you're more confident that you're going to forget your passport or more confident that you're not going to forget it, namely bigger or less than a half. But this is going to have the same kind of pattern. If you've got a high degree of belief, you're going to think you will forget it. If you've got a low degree of belief, you think you won't forget it. Whichever way around. Whatever you have, you move away from it. This is also going to be an undermining situation. Once you've adopted a specific attitude, some other attitude looks better and indeed looks rationally required, because now that's just the way the world's going to be like. Once you've adopted a certain opinion, the world's going to be the other way. Rationality should tell you to get as close to the world as you can, maybe most accurate degrees of belief, or maybe whatever's supported by the evidence, but both of those are changing because of these cases. So, undermining, unstable beliefs are bad. Once you've adopted some attitude, something else looks better, and indeed, in these cases, that something else looks like it's even rationally required. Rationality is pushing us into these unstable things. It's not just like, I happen to have these flip-floppy beliefs. It's like rationality requires me to have these flip-flop beliefs. This is very worrying. What do? It's conflicting with this general principle which we're trying to support, which is saying your beliefs should be non-undermining, you shouldn't be in that situation, they should be self-recommending. Alright, so what do we do in these cases? Let's go for this for now. So, all attitudes that you could have in this situation are undermining. If you started off with 0.7, you'd move to 0, then you'd move to 1, and then you'd move to 0, and then 1, and then 0, and then 1. Once you're wherever you are, I kind of set up this scenario as you're going to have perfect information about where it is. So you're going to flip to either 1 or 0, depending on whether you started off above or less than half. So every belief is undermining, in particular both 1 and 0.7 are undermining. But there's something better about 1 than 0.7. 1 is part of a loop. So your beliefs are undermining, yes. But if you adopt degree of belief 1, it's undermining, it says move to 0. But then 0 says go back to 1. So it doesn't sort of ultimately rule itself out. It doesn't say, I'm like in the end bad. It just says, you're going to move away from me temporarily, but then I'm going to end up being supported again. So the suggestion is, for now, you should adopt beliefs that are not ultimately undermining. I mean, ideally you should adopt beliefs that aren't undermining at all, ones that are self-recommending, but these cases are just ones where you can't have that. Where you're going to have to get some kind of undermining us. That was just the setup of the case. But if you have degree of belief 1, that's better because it's part of this loop. It will come back to itself at some point. And the good thing about this suggestion here is that any kind of recommendation function you give me, any kind of, if you have thus and so beliefs, then you'll sit there and think about it, and you'll come up with these other kind of beliefs. And then you'll sit there and think about it, and then you come up with these other kind of beliefs. And we just follow that like, come up with the other kind of beliefs and go wherever. We will end up at some point looping. If you allow me to go to the transfinite, but that's a technical, maybe a worry, but we're not going to worry about that. So it looks like we can always satisfy this criterion, whereas we can't satisfy the idea that they should be self-recommending. We can satisfy this one of they should sort of be ultimately self-recommending, maybe not after one stage, but they should come back themselves at some point. So the first suggestion I'm making is that you should adopt credences that are parts of loops that aren't ultimately undermining. So here this would say adopt something like 1 or 0 rather than 0.7. Because it doesn't ultimately rule itself out. I ultimately think this isn't going to be a great proposal, because this credence of 1, while it is at some point self-recommending, it is so recommending, it does come back to itself after a sequence of recommendations. It still has these unfortunate bad features of being undermining. Adoption of it is still unstable. It's not like I can say it looks good from its own perspective. If you try to adopt that kind of attitude, you're going to want to change your mind. I can't trust it when I'm going to make decisions, because it's going to recommend I make decisions according to 0 instead of 1. What's nice about 1, why I thought it was better, is it because it plays a happy role with 0. It's not like 1 by itself has any nice features. It has nice features sort of in combination with 0. So maybe instead we should take the idea of this, but take the looping nature of the beliefs more seriously. So I think about, in these kinds of scenarios, you adopt a belief, and then you change your mind when you think about it, and then you change your mind when you think about it. And in these cases, you're flipping. I'm really, I think I should go left. Oh no, then I should go right. Oh no, then I should go left. Oh no, then I should go right. Let's take that kind of left, right nature of your beliefs and think about that as your opinion kind of itself. So we're going to adopt this kind of new creedal state, this new kind of attitude that accounts for this instability. It has the 0 and the 1 playing this happy role together, supporting each other. 1 is only good in combination with 0. So maybe we can do something like adopt the set 0, 1. Let's think about what this proposal is. This proposal is, so the suggestion is you should adopt imprecise probabilities in these cases. And in particular, in this case, the kind of extremal one. So what are imprecise probabilities? In general, you're taking the attitude, your opinion towards things to be given by a set of probability functions. So normally we say things like, you should be a half confident that the coin will land heads, or I'm 0.8 confident that my train will be on time. This doesn't require you to give a specific number. It's going to say, you get to have this so-called creedal committee. There's going to be a number of different probability functions. These are sort of precise opinions. We used to say you have to pick a precise opinion. The imprecise attitude, you're going to have various different opinions, which are various different sort of precise opinions, which are all somehow working together to represent your general opinion. It's something close to It's something close to like not making a decision or suspending judgment, but it's got more structure than that. It's not just like I suspend judgment over whether I should go left or right. I've got some various sort of opinions about it, but I'm not going to be able to pin it down any further than that. So we've got this creedal committee that represents my opinions. So these kinds of imprecise probabilities are used actually for a number of roles in formal epistemology. People have presented them and been interested in them. So it's against the idea that we should just have like this we should give a specific number to the various propositions. Sometimes, here's one reason you might want to move to imprecise probabilities. Sometimes I just can't settle on an opinion. I'm just like, that's just asking too much of me. I've got this kind of indecision going around. So you might think imprecise probabilities are just a better representation of how we actually go about the world, like thinking about various propositions, how likely they are. Of course, someone can respond to this just saying, that's just irrational. You should just settle on an opinion. Maybe it looks to you like you can't settle on an opinion, but you better come up with something. There are cases, though, where you think, or people have suggested that we really should be having these imprecise opinions. It's not just like, I can't make up my mind, it's not just like a failure of me. It's like, that's the appropriate response to the evidence. The evidence just doesn't support anything stronger than that. So, for example, if you know this coin has come from Bias Coin Factory, but you don't know whether the Bias Coin Factory was set on the head setting or the tail setting. You know it's either 0.2 or 0.8, and you've just got nothing that's going to tell you whether it's 0.2 or 0.8, right? It's either on the head setting or the tail setting, we just don't know which. Maybe the appropriate response to this incomplete evidence is to have the attitude 0.2, 0.8. It represents, those are the two ways it might be. Those are these are the two creedal committee members, and the two of them put together make up my general opinion. Or you've got a bag with some number of balls that are either black or white. How confident are you that the next one drawn out is black? Well, I don't know how many of them are black and how many of them are white. There's various different possibilities, there's 10 different possibilities, and that's just my opinion. It's just, it's either 0, or it's a tenth, or it's a 2/10, or all the way up to 1. We need all these different precise guys, we get them together, and that represents my overall opinion. Again, some people might respond and say, no. Either you should split your difference between the various possibilities that your evidence supports, so you should just have a half. So people can respond and say, even when there's not this evidence, or it doesn't look like the claim is that that incomplete evidence supports this imprecise thing, they can say, no, you should make it precise somehow, like either split your opinion over the various possibilities and just so you'd end up with a half there, or do something else, just come up with an opinion. So people can still respond to this claim that we should be imprecise and say, no, you should actually precise it somehow. So the thought is, I'm using the same kind of framework, and I'm saying, even if you want to reject it on just the that represents us side, or on the that's the right response to the evidence, I think it's like even more pressing, or even more looks like we should be going that way in the case of undermining scenarios. So I'm using this framework that's been kind of developed for lots of other purposes, for people thinking it represents the evidence better, people thinking it's more psychologically realistic, it allows for a structure that's more close to what we've got, certain kind of decisions we make. There's lots of advantages of these kinds of models of belief that are out there. And I'm saying, actually, those models of belief look like exactly the sort of ones that we need in this situation. They're the sort of ones that account for kind of instability, indecision. I don't want to like hold myself down to a particular opinion here. So the suggestion is, in these cases where your beliefs are undermining, you should adopt imprecise probabilities. And in particular, the kinds of imprecise probabilities that you adopt should be like the collection of the ones you are unstable between. So when we try to adopt a particular belief, it says, no, you should change it to this other belief. And then you should change it to this other belief. The imprecise probability that we're going to say represents your belief is the collection of those unstable ones. So all the kind of belief instability, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to change my mind, is still controlled within this set. Because you have a set of these creedal committee members. Each one of those is unstable, but they recommend other people who are also in the committee. So all the instability happens within the committee, so the whole committee as a whole looks okay. So I claim that this kind of stable opinion is, this kind of imprecise opinion is stable, it's self-recommending. To make a claim like this clear, I would have to say exactly what it means, what you do when you think about imprecise probabilities recommending other opinions. So she holds a current attitude 0-1. She sits there, thinks about her opinions, and says, do I want to change my mind? Just the same way we did when we did the precise guys. They have an opinion, they sit there and they think, and then do they want to change their mind? If they do, then they're unstable, and that's a bad thing. Now she's got this set of 0-1. She sits there, she thinks, does she want to change her mind? I'm claiming, no, this is going to be good, this is going to be a stable opinion, and all the nice things will come out. So here, what does it mean? Sorry, it's some water. Sorry. So we've got this imprecise probability, and someone sits there, reflects on it, and thinks about, does she want to change her mind? And the way I'm suggesting we do that is, you ask each of the creedal committee members what they recommend. And your new opinion is the collection of what all the creedal committee members recommend. What happens here is that if one thing recommends another, then everything in that new set is recommended by someone in that old set. So we have a collection of things, we ask each of them what they recommend, and we take a collection of that. So if you started off with a loop, then you revise each of these members and you stick with the same ultimate set. So you have that 0 recommends 1 and 1 recommends 0. We have this imprecise state 0-1. We look at what 0 recommends, it recommends 1. We look at what 1 recommends, recommends 0. The collection 0-1, I'm suggesting, recommends the collection 1-0, which is just the same thing. It's just the same. So loops, as not the precise opinions in loops, but the loop itself, is this sort of opinion you can have, which, when you reflect on it, makes you not want to change your mind. Let me finish up pretty soon. So just talk about the bad thing about undermining beliefs. One of the bad things is you couldn't trust them making decisions. So how about with this new set 0-1, I claim it's not undermining. If you just sit there and think about what you don't want to do, you're not going to change your mind. Is it also going to be trustworthy in terms of making decisions? Or we might think, well, it's not clear to me what this tells me in terms of making decisions. I've got this opinion 0-1. Should I then go left or right? If we ask the 0 person, he'll say, go right, because well, the home is definitely home is definitely to the right. If we ask the one person, he's going to say, you should go left. I mean, home is on the left. So we don't have like a concrete opinion about what we should do. Should we go left or right? And different accounts of decision making with imprecise probabilities will tell you different things about what you should do in these situations. So one proposal would be something like, well, since they don't agree on what you should do, they say, one of them says you should go left, the other one says you should go right. Just do whatever you like. I mean, there's no particular thing that these credences recommend you should do. It's just now either option is open, your credences don't tell you what to do, you just have to make the decision however you do it. Since his beliefs don't determine which one's better, he's just going to be left without advice from his beliefs. But these aren't especially odd cases. There's lots of cases where our beliefs don't tell us exactly what to do. It's just left for us. Like, I mean, if you in this expected utility framework, if these two options have the same expected utility, it's not going to tell you which one to do. It's just going to say, pick one of them. Similarly here, it's just not going to tell you what to do. So we replace undermining or kind of unstable or advice that we can't trust with no advice at all. Maybe that's at least better. At least it's not conflicting advice. It's just, well, you've got to make the decision however you want to go ahead and do it. But there's other kinds of decision procedures we might use with imprecise probabilities. For example, you might have an account which says something like, well, in this case, this would say something like, just pick whichever path is prettier, like, or in general, minimize worst case loss. So we're not going to treat any of them individually as the one which you should trust. We should just generally look at the whole setup and think about what we should do on that basis. But again, it's not undermining because it's not like the opinion says someone else's. It's not like we're getting conflicting advice here. We're just getting advice that's coming from the general framework. So the story is, we wanted beliefs to not be undermining. Undermining beliefs were bad. But these kind of bad navigator style cases, or passport, or the stock price, or the the bluffing case, all these sorts of cases cause problems for this idea that our beliefs shouldn't be undermining. They are cases where our beliefs just will be undermining, and what should we do? Rationally, how should we rationally respond to these situations? They're particularly worrying because it looks like any accounts of justifying rationality are going to be sort of undermined in these cases. Whatever we think rationality supports the one opinion, but then once you adopt it, rationality will support the other opinion. So the suggestion is that in these cases, we can allow for imprecise degrees of belief or imprecise probabilities, and this allows our attitudes to be non-undermining, to be self-recommending. It has this nice feature that every member of the creedal state is recommended by someone in the creedal state, not themselves. But the pair of 0 and 1 are in happy union together, they support each other, and we can make decisions by listening to them both and seeing what they say, and going along with that. So, I'll finish by quickly saying what this tells us about other cases. So I've said in the bad navigator case it says you should have 0 and 1. If you spell out the passport case in the same way as you spelled out the bad navigator case, you'd also have 0 and 1. You could have the 0 and 1 was because I said it gives you certain evidence, or you'll definitely forget it. That was just like a modelling thing. We might say, well, I'm not certain that I'm anti-expert, or maybe there might be an announcement, or maybe there's other things going on. It doesn't have to be an extreme one. The case of leap, this was a case where there are some beliefs that are non-undermining. 0 and 1 were self-recommending cases. If I'm like super confident that I'm going to be able to make it across this leap, across this crevice, then I will in fact be able to do it, and I know that, and I'm certain of it, so one, it looks like a great thing to have. 0.7 is not self-recommending. It says move to 1. This attitude 0, 1. So this is sort of an unstable, or I don't want to commit to 0, I don't want to commit to 1. It's either 0 or 1. It's just like, yeah. Both of these are like equally good representatives of my opinion. Is that self-recommending? Well, according to my account, I'm saying, yeah, that's self-recommending. It's not one you're getting out of any kind of instability. It's not like necessarily we're going to end up in this loop. But it's something that if you end up with that opinion, and you think about how you should change your mind, it's going to end up staying with itself. So it's going to be self-recommending. But maybe the only cases you would arrive at something like this is if you started off with some sorts of imprecise probabilities. So if you're a person who doesn't like imprecise probabilities, but you think, okay, maybe in these kinds of odd cases you can deal with imprecise probabilities, you're probably not going to like this, because you're going to say, like, how would I ever get there? We don't really need that. Let's just stick with the precise ones. But it is kind of around to be there as a proposal. You can, if you want, say, okay, I said it was like 0, 1. Maybe it should be an interval 0, 1, allow for these middle guys as well. I can do that if you like. I can say, well, 0 recommends 1, 1 recommends 0, a half is kind of mutually supported by the pair. So maybe when we're thinking about what things recommend, we shouldn't think just about what each of the members recommends, but also some that are kind of mutually supported by them. And then I can allow for these kinds of nicer interval things. Alright, so I'm going to finish up there and say, yeah, here's the suggestion. In these kinds of situations where your precise beliefs are guaranteed to undermine themselves, you're going to end up having unstable beliefs. But maybe there's a kind of attitude that accounts for this unstable belief, and maybe that itself is kind of stable, self-recommending. It gives us a reason to accept imprecise probabilities if you're a person who worries about them in the first place. I mean, in the background, you've got this kind of supervaluational model for the liar paradox going on, which I think is just a connection. All right, that's it. Thanks.